On April 10, 1963, the nuclear submarine USS Thresher was conducting tests off the coast of Massachusetts. There were 129 people on board, 112 sailors, and 17 civilian specialists. During a dive to a depth of about 400 meters, an accident occurred in a high-pressure pipeline. Seawater began to enter the system through a crack. At that moment, the protection was triggered, and the nuclear reactor was automatically shut down. The submarine was left without power and motionless. Water continued to flow, the pumps could not cope. The ocean pressure increased with each meter of diving. At a depth of about 600 meters, the hull of the submarine exceeded its tensile strength. The metal could not withstand it. The ship collapsed within a split second. The death of the crew was instantaneous. With such a depressurization, the lungs and internal organs rupture from the pressure. The bodies were torn apart and mixed with the debris. Only individual fragments of the hull were found on the bottom. On August 12, 2000, the nuclear submarine Kursk was taking part in the Northern Fleet exercises in the Barents Sea. At 11:28 a.m., a torpedo exploded in the first compartment on board. 2 minutes and 15 seconds later, a second, much more powerful explosion occurred, which destroyed almost the entire bow of the submarine. The submarine sank to the bottom at a depth of 108 meters. Of the 118 crew members, only 23 sailors survived. Their death was different, not quick but painful. It was dark, cold, and with little air. For 2 days, they inhaled air that gradually lost oxygen. Carbon dioxide accumulated in the blood. Suffocation set in, rapid breathing, dizziness, then loss of consciousness and cardiac arrest. The bodies were found 9 days later. They were preserved, but had traces of asphyxia, characteristic dark spots on the skin. Some held pencils in their hands, trying to write notes to their families. The Blue Hole in Dahab, Egypt, is considered one of the most dangerous places for divers in the world. The depth of the vertical well is more than 100 meters, and at a depth of about 55 meters is the famous Arch, a tunnel 26 meters long connecting the well with the open sea. In 2015, British diver Byron White attempted to go through the Arch. At a depth of more than 50 meters, he lost his orientation. Due to the high concentration of nitrogen in the blood, so-called nitrogen intoxication began, a condition in which coordination is impaired and control over actions is reduced. He tried to rise but did it too quickly. The sudden change in pressure caused decompression sickness. Gas bubbles began to form in the body, clogging blood vessels and damaging tissue. The body had already started to turn blue on the surface due to internal bleeding. He died from cardiac and respiratory arrest. Shortly after his death, his lungs were filled with blood and gases. From the outside, it looked like he had simply lost consciousness, but inside, his body was already fatally damaged. On November 15, 2017, the diesel-electric submarine San Juan of the Argentine Navy left the port of Ushuaia and was heading to Mar del Plata. There were 44 people on board. During the crossing, water leaked through the ventilation valve. It got into the battery compartment and caused a short circuit and a fire. The crew reported problems, after which the connection was lost. The explosion did not kill everyone at once. Some of the crew remained alive in closed compartments. There, oxygen quickly ran out. Death occurred through suffocation. A person begins to breathe rapidly, then feels dizzy and weak, and then loses consciousness. After a few minutes, breathing stops completely. The submarine was discovered only a year after the disaster. Due to the depth of 900 meters, the bodies remained inside the hull. In such conditions, they slowly decompose, but the low water temperature slows down the process. In fact, they are still lying in the boat, in a natural underwater grave. Bushman's Hole Cave in South Africa is one of the deepest diving sites in the world. The maximum depth of the dive exceeds 270 meters. In 1994, diver Deon Dreyer died here. His body remained on the bottom. In January 2005, Australian diver David Shaw decided to descend and try to recover the remains. At a depth of about 270 meters, he found the body, but while trying to secure it, he became entangled in cables and a net. At this depth, the oxygen supply quickly runs out, and every movement requires great effort. Shaw lost the ability to free himself. A few minutes later, he lost consciousness and died. His death was recorded by a helmet camera. The body did not float, but remained below, along with the body of the previously deceased Deon Dreyer. The cold water and pressure kept the remains almost intact, as if in a refrigerator. When rescuers raised the bodies, they looked pale and hard as the slow decomposition at low temperatures preserved them. In February 2014, a group of 5 Finnish divers descended into the Soginja Cave in Norway. This is a complex underwater system with narrow passages and a depth of more than 130 meters. However, only 3 returned to the surface. The surviving divers wrote an explanatory note from which it became known that during the dive they split into 2 groups. The first of 2 people entered the underwater cave 2 hours before the second group, which included 3 divers. At a depth of 110 meters, one of the scuba divers from the first group got stuck in a narrow passage. In such places, it is impossible to quickly turn around or surface. A colleague was unable to save him, as a result of which the man died. At the same time, one of the members of the second group got into a similar situation, and they could not save him, despite the efforts of his comrades. When the oxygen ran out, both of the stuck divers died of suffocation. The scuba divers who managed to get out of the cave asked a local resident for help. The surviving divers were taken to the hospital in Tromsø by helicopter and plane. In the hospital, they were placed in a pressure chamber. The surviving divers returned to their homeland a couple of days later. Their bodies remained in the cave for more than 2 months. Due to the cold water, they almost did not decompose. The skin became pale, but was preserved, and the muscles remained hard. Later, other divers performed a risky operation and raised the remains. These 2 bodies became a symbol of how dangerous cave diving is. On April 7, 1989, the nuclear submarine Komsomolets was on combat duty at a depth of 386 meters at a speed of 13 kilometers per hour. Suddenly, a fire started in the aft compartment. A signal appeared on the watch mechanic's console. The temperature in the 7th compartment is above 70 degrees. The captain immediately turned on the emergency fire extinguishing system, but it was powerless against the fire. The fire spread to another compartment. The hose-breathing apparatus system was damaged, as a result of which part of the crew was severely poisoned. The boat, increasing speed, began to surface. 15 minutes after blowing out the main ballast tanks, it surfaced. Most of the crew was brought to the surface. Many were brought back to life, but they, weakened and not yet recovered, would die later in the cold water, when superhuman efforts would be required from each. The water temperature was only plus 2 degrees Celsius. Death occurred from hypothermia. First, loss of sensation in the arms and legs, then convulsions, loss of consciousness, and cardiac arrest. Of the 69 people, only 27 were saved. The bodies of the rest could not be recovered. They sank to the bottom along with the boat after losing buoyancy at a depth of 1,685 meters. These stories show that the underwater environment does not forgive mistakes. Each of these cases was the result of technical malfunctions, miscalculations, or violations of safety rules. And all of them ended tragically. Mort was with you. Like and subscribe to the channel.